Hello, everyone. Please join me in welcoming Chris Grove to the stage. He's talking on the State of the Union 2024 or State of the Market Share Union 2024, but he is always not to be missed, so I think you're in the right place. Chris, please come on stage.
Thank you, and if anyone wants to steal my identity, all of my stuff is right there, so if you see me glancing nervously, repeatedly, off to the side of the stage, that's why. We are going to move through a lot of things very quickly today. These slides will be made available post-presentation, and I'm more than happy to continue this conversation with any and all of you in this room when we have more than 19 minutes and 43 seconds to do it. So let's see what happens when I hit the green button multiple times and advance past where I'd actually like to be. All right. U.S. online gambling, who will win and why? I'm assuming that's what's showing up on those screens. I may have tipped my hand a little bit with the color of that foam finger in terms of who I think is going to win the market. So a little bit more of the how and the why. I also suspect if that were a DraftKings produced foam hand, a different finger would be sticking up, is my guess. Briefly, what informs my perspective? I know most of you, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. In short, some of you give me money and then I redistribute it to the rest of you, is basically what my role in the industry is. First thing we need to talk about is the consolidated share of U.S. online gambling. This goes back to the first quarter of 2022. You can see that even in that short time, and I'm not going to try to have you read the small text on these slides, again, all available post-presentation. The one thing we really just want to point out is that blue and orange, which represents FanDuel and DraftKings, and how even in the space of the last couple of years, that consolidated share, and when I say consolidated share, what I mean is GGR, and that includes online sports betting and online casino, how that consolidated share is increasing to the point where those two brands now control 70% of the market. So that's the stage that we're working with, right? Everything else sort of revolves around that starting point, that baseline in terms of who can win, how they can win, who can make share, and who can take share. We'll talk briefly about what the size of the prize is, so 70% of what? What's the value of gaining share in this market? What's the value of investing in this market? Projections here from Eilers and Kraychek. Nice angle up and to the right, CAGR of about 15% over the next 5 years. We're talking about an industry between online sports betting, online casino, and poker worth about $35 billion in GGR within the next couple of years. And there's not a lot of speculation in these numbers, just for the record. We're pretty conservative when we talk about what states we think are going to be in there. This isn't we get a California, this isn't we get a Texas. This is largely the states that we have today, just continuing along the trajectory that they're on. 35 billion, that's a lot of billions, right? Not just in an absolute sense, but relative to the total size of the commercial and tribal gambling industries in the US. This is not a rounding error. This is not a nice to have. Increasingly, this is becoming a need to have if you are in the gambling industry. And that reality, I think, is also going to inform a lot of what we talk about today. I want to note quickly, and I think this is a theme you're going to hear echoed throughout a lot of other presentations over the next couple of days in some way, shape, or form. Those blue lines of varying pleasant tones of EKG blue, sometimes I think of Todd as the dark blue and Adam as the light blue, but maybe you guys have different impressions of who's the light and who's the dark in that duo. These numbers do not, tough room, these numbers do not include any adjacent revenue. So there's no lottery in here, there's no fantasy, no horse racing, skill, sweepstakes, media, ad sales, data sales, prestige, TV series development, limited runs of Jason Robbins' Air Force Ones. I'm making a lot of DraftKings jokes today. I'm not entirely sure what's happening with that. But if we were to go through the exercise of charting out all of that adjacent revenue, some of it more direct and available today, see the Jackpocket acquisition as an example, some of it a little more speculative, see the ad sales piece, although I think we're going to start to hear more things about that in the quarters ahead. We could have a number that is closer to 40 billion than it is to 35 billion. So there's a lot of opportunity not actually even captured on this chart. Could you please say a lot of things about several individual operators very quickly? I'm glad you asked. That is exactly what I intend to do for the next 12 or 13 minutes of the life that we're sharing together. And by the way, thank you all for sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it. I know there are a lot of things that you could do. There are 3 things you could be doing if you wanted to hear someone speak on the stage. And then obviously there are a lot of people you could see, say hello to, catch up with, do business with. And I do appreciate that you spend this time with me and listen to me talk about these things. We're going to run through these operators. Each slide's going to kind of look the same. Again, all these slides, no reason to take out the camera and take pictures of the slide, which always feels like a rough way to revisit a presentation to me. All these readily available online. Each slide's going to kind of go the same way. Where's the share today, share trend, where are our product rankings for each operator, and then we're going to run down some of the opportunities and challenges for each operator. We're going to wrap up with some predictions about how those opportunities and challenges mesh into a base case for market share a couple of years out, and then also talk a little bit about the bull case for each of these operators. 3 big opportunities for FanDuel, like the US listing, not just the partial listing, but the full shift, probably creates some new equity opportunities, opens up new worlds of M&A for them as an operator. The opportunity to expand out into multi-branding for online casino. Obviously, Stardust didn't quite work out the way they might have expected initially, but they still have the opportunity to bring a strong casino-first brand to market in the US, and I think there's quite a bit of potential there, especially if you look at what DraftKings has done with GNOG. And then tripling down on the multi-product approach. Arguably, no one is doing multi-product as well in the US right now as FanDuel, and continuing to reinvest in that multi-product approach, building strong bridges between all those different aspects of the ecosystem. Those are the opportunities we see for Big Blue. 3 big challenges. A lot of the things that propelled FanDuel to their current leadership or neck and neck position, depending on how you want to measure it, those advantages have half-lives, right? The head start on same game parlays has a half-life. Fantasy has a half-life. So some of those core advantages are eroding at this point. Maybe there's some M&A inefficiency as well when you think about the structure of Flutter and then FanDuel, and whether or not you have full alignment of incentives within those groups. Are they able to execute M&A as efficiently as some groups that might not have that kind of diluted focus or split structure? And then the decline of the fantasy portfolio. This has been a strange one to me. We've really seen DraftKings continue to pedal down on fantasy. And I won't say that FanDuel has lifted the foot off of the pedal, but by almost every measure, players, revenue, et cetera, they are not appearing to invest in fantasy to the same degree that we're seeing DraftKings invest. And that feels like a weakness. Not going to run through the rating so much because we'll summarize these at the end, but they're there on the slide. Let's go into DraftKings. Currently 33% share. They're trending up as FanDuel is starting to apparently stall out a little bit. Very strong on the product ranking for both OSB and online casino. And these are the EKG product rankings when I refer to those rankings. There are 3 big opportunities. Leveraging their multiple premium, right? As a pure play, publicly traded window into the US online gambling opportunity, DraftKings just doesn't have a peer. They will soon, arguably, at least to some degree with FanDuel, but right now they're getting valued at what is a pretty aggressive premium. And you saw them wield that equity, I think, very effectively with the recent acquisition of Jackpocket. They are just in a position to spend more, right? They have the freedom and flexibility to spend more because they have more value to work with. Starting to leverage free cash flow, again, puts them in a very compelling position to execute M&A and investments and partnerships that maybe it's difficult for a Caesars or a BetMGM to justify at this point. And then we talked about it already with Jackpocket briefly, low customer acquisition cost database expansion. With lottery, Jackpocket was a 6 million or so database, 1 million or so that had been paid active in the last 12 months. And then obviously just continuing to execute on that similar playbook for fantasy. We acquire customers at a relatively low cost, and then we have a wide range of high LTV products to sell those customers into. That's the basic ARB of our business, right? That's it. That's the heart of it. DraftKings is arguably better positioned to execute that ARB with the greatest value creation of all companies in the space. 3 big challenges. That multiple premium comes at a cost. There are intense expectations on DraftKings, not just being neck and neck with FanDuel, but putting themselves in a position to be the winner-take-all of the market. That's important. I think that might be a little lost on some of us who are in the bubble of our industry. A lot of folks looking at our industry from the outside in are being told a story by DraftKings explicitly and implicitly that DraftKings is set to be the whatever of online gambling, the Amazon, the Robinhood, whatever your stand-in for winner-take-all is. That's the narrative that DraftKings is telling. That's part of the narrative that's propelling that valuation. That's a lofty expectation to live up to. Their dominance, their success, is something, especially with online casino, that could complicate their future. DraftKings and FanDuel have done a little too good, right? Not just in online sports betting, but in online casino as well. If I'm a Penn or a BetMGM or a Caesars, I am thinking very, very skeptically. If I'm a tribal stakeholder, I'm thinking very skeptically about allowing these brands into my market because they've shown time and time again, they're not just going to do well, they're going to win. And they're not going to just stop at winning, they're interested in dominating. That may have a dampening effect on the willingness of states to open up these kinds of products, depending on how local stakeholders think about that. And then replicating the omni-channel advantages that land-based casinos, at least in theory, enjoy. We're not seeing them executed to the fullest yet. We'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about our friends at Caesars and BetMGM. The fact is, MGM has a bottomless wallet of MGM bucks, right? Experiences at the Bellagio, at the Aria. You hang out in the little F1 cube. Seemed a little like maybe hot and stuffy in there, but still pretty cool. They can offer all of these things at cost. DraftKings, FanDuel still have to pay rack rate. DraftKings doesn't have access to that legacy rewards database. DraftKings doesn't have the opportunity to shake the hands, figuratively, and I guess kind of literally, of hundreds of thousands of customers a month coming through their properties. That's a big deal. A lot of green. Good for you, DraftKings. BetMGM. This is where share really starts to drop off, right? We go from the 30s to the 12. The 12s? I guess there's only the 12. There's not really the 12s. There's only one of them. That's where we see share fall off a cliff. We see a little bit of differential on the product ranking side as well. I think the good news is there are still substantial and largely untapped advantages for our friends at MGM. And a lot of these apply to Caesars and Penn as well. That omni-channel potential is massive. Massive, right? Just had the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. MGM generated something like, let's call it 10,000 new depositing customers for their app at their sports books during Super Bowl weekend because, again, they have that footfall. They have the opportunity to look customers in the eye, have a relationship with them. That just gives you access to a new world of opportunities that you don't enjoy if you're a digital-only operator. Really maximizing the X integration, time will tell, right? BetMGM has had some other integrations that haven't played out as people had hoped, but a lot of sports lives on X, and a lot of sports gambling lives on X. So a strong integration there definitely has a lot of potential. And then leveraging Angstrom to catch up on the OSB product front, especially with same-game parlays. The transformative thing about same-game parlays, remember, is not just that it creates a different level of excitement and engagement and customer acquisition and referral opportunities. That product is single-handedly moving sports betting from what historically was a 5 to 6% structural hold product. National structural hold for sports betting at this point is closer to 9%. That's already a transformative change. I don't think it's unreasonable that if we go further and further down the parlay path, further and further down the sports betting equivalent of carnival games, for those of you who come from the casino industry, right? Not unfathomable to me that we move in the direction of a 10% plus structural hold product. So your ability to catch up and get to parity on parlays, on SGP, on these more creative games is critical, and hopeful that Angstrom can provide that for them. 3 big challenges. Look, the lack of parity on the OSB front is a challenge for almost every major legacy operator. The product just isn't there yet. And when people say things like these products are commodities, it's all about value, it's all about pricing, I have a few problems with that thesis. I think it's an easy thing to say that doesn't quite bear out for the broader customer base. But the big thing is that's definitely not true if there isn't product parity in the market. And so there is the opportunity / challenge, Christopportunity, to catch up on that front. I don't think it's a secret to anyone in this room that JV structure with Entain creates substantial inefficiencies. An absolutely terrific team at BetMGM. I think some of the smartest operators in the industry. But the reality is their leash is just different, right? Because of that JV structure, what they can do, how they can integrate, they just have a different layer of friction than some other operators. And then the overhang from turbulence at Entain. Whether that's on the regulatory front, that's not unique to Entain. Any legacy operator is going to have a few of those skeletons in the closet, monsters under the bed. Leadership turnover at Entain, lack of stability there is just net negative for BetMGM. It's just focused dilutive, and it becomes a real challenge that does impede on the day-to-day execution. Yellow, mostly yellow. Yellow's not bad. Yellow means I can still speed through that light. What do you mean I had to already be in the intersection in order to continue? No, it means I can still keep going ahead. The overall momentum is the thing to really call out here. BetMGM is, because of some of the challenges that they've faced, I think dropping out of the momentum class that we would have put them in a year or two ago. And they certainly, again, have the wherewithal, the ability, the capabilities to reverse that, but it's going in the wrong direction right now. We'll talk about one or two more land-based operators, and then we're going to skip through a bunch of other operators just for the sake of time. But again, presentation available. Happy to continue these conversations. But I want to call out Caesars especially because while there is overlap between Caesars and MGM, there are also, I think, critical differences that are worth discussing. Three of the big opportunities, really, the Caesars reward database is a massive database. Mr. Loveman's stroke of genius that to this day continues to give them access to millions and millions of customers and a pretty interesting data lake on those customers as well. Is it the best? No. Is it good enough? Probably. Omni-channel potential for them, specifically with Caesars leaning into multi-brand for online casino. Got a pretty interesting portfolio on the Caesars side of not just Vegas brands, but national brands, right? You've got everything from the Horseshoe to Caesars Palace and a few points in between. They, I think, have one of the more interesting portfolios of brands to really execute multi-brand online casino efficiently, to meet different customers at different points in their journey. And also, critically, everyone in this room knows not a lot of fidelity among casino customers. Want to change their brand, change their luck, new games, whatever. Yeah. If I'm going to be losing customers and I know that it's predictable that they're going to bounce off of my property at some point, I'd really love the opportunity to have a larger brand portfolio that I can send them over to when they want to change. And they can come back to me when they want to change again. There's a lot of undiscussed potential there. Three big challenges. Caesars is, I think, an incredibly well-run company on a lot of levels. Retail is their DNA. This is El Dorado, right? This is not Caesars that many of us in this room might remember from Mitch Garber, Caesars Interactive. This is a retail casino company, so they do not have it in their DNA. Mr. Rieg has also hung an EBITDA target, I think about $500 million on either 2025 or 2026, sometime soon. Not in the comfortable, distant future of eventually, but more in the short term. That's a big EBITDA target, and it may force them to act a little more cautiously than they would otherwise. And within Caesars, and this is true, I think, for other retail operators as well, there's just not a clear framework for accretive digital M&A. Who owns that? How does it get executed? Where does it get folded in? These are questions that are a lot harder for Caesars to ask than some competing operators. Lightning round. Bet Rivers, really well-run company that does casino well, a lot of opportunity to expand into adjacent products, and they have a nimbleness. Richard Schwartz is nimble. I mean, he doesn't look it, but the guy has hops. Some challenges, trying to do US and global at the same time, tough. Staying competitive on CAC, also tough. And that brand has a weird sort of elasticity challenge, right? It may not translate out of its regional markets. Happy to discuss the remaining brands online, but going to speed through them here for the sake of time. I don't know if you guys caught that, all the opportunities for Penn or ESPN. Same thing with Fanatics, and then we're going to wrap up by quickly clicking through Hard Rock. That was a lot of words. Could you wrap it up and give us some numbers and conclusions? Thank you again for asking. It's so kind of you to provide me with these transitions. Makes my life a lot easier. Here's our sense of how the market might look at the end of 2025. That middle column is our estimated base case for 2025 share. We've got DraftKings taking a measurable, but not necessarily material lead over FanDuel. Some other things that might surprise people here, we see Penn as the biggest absolute winner. I'm more bullish than bearish on ESPN bet. I think it's fair to have at least some long ESPN at this point. The bull case is where maybe we get a little more controversial. Whereas in our base case, we've got DraftKings up 3, bull case is DraftKings up 9, which is no longer a neck and neck race. It's like a neck and abdomen race. I don't even actually know how to extend that metaphor. There's substantial distance in that scenario. We also think there's maybe some unappreciated upside for our friends at Hard Rock, who can really leverage their Florida monopoly to build a stronger competitive position nationally. And again, a very talented team there as well. So in the base case, we see a slight reshuffling of the share. FanDuel and DraftKings gain. Everyone else looks to improve their position or stem their losses. In the bull case, in 2025, we could be looking at a substantially different market composition than we are today. I'm going to wrap up with a conclusion of all of these advantages, opportunities, challenges. Our basic thesis is simple. The winners in this market are going to be the operators with the most mores. More product features and content to win those core verticals of OSB and online casino. More adjacent products like lottery, fantasy, skill gaming to mitigate CAC and compete for the greatest range of the overall consumer wallet. Not just the gambling slice of that wallet, but the overall wallet. How do we get more into entertainment dollars? And more brands to engage authentically with the widest array of interested consumers. The idea that any one brand is elastic enough to meet the needs, wants, desires of the full range of the US online gambling market makes little sense to me. And finally, more organic interactions with consumers across multiple contexts. That's omni-channel, that's media, that's these brands building genuine relationships with consumers as opposed to just having the transactional relationship of give me money and I will take your bet. I want to close by thanking our track sponsor, Morgan Stanley. There's my email, questions, comments, complaints. Thank you for not stealing my identity. All my stuff still seems to be there. We only ran a minute or two over. Thank you again for your time and looking forward to continuing the conversation.